Good morning. My name is Captain Miolo with the Elizabeth Police Department. It's Tuesday, December 3rd. At 5:30 this morning, I was woken up by the shift commander, Lieutenant Ray Harold, regarding a fatal shooting involving one of our officers who was investigating a robbery at a convenience store. The suspect, whose name was John James, was shot by Officer Frank Thomas. Apparently, James was in the process of robbing the store and made threats to the clerk that he was going to shoot him, but the clerk didn't see any weapon. The suspect was later identified by Officer Thomas about a block away, and he was ordered to stop by Officer Thomas. Thomas claimed that James raised a gun at him, so he shot 3 times and ultimately struck him and killed him. There was a 22 caliber handgun and a wallet found next to the suspect's body. Now, witnesses who were at the scene report that James was unarmed. They say that another officer arrived and retrieved something from his trunk and then brought it over and knelt down next to Mr. James. Those witnesses are being interviewed by the media, and their interview is scheduled to be played on the news in the short future. The citizens are claiming that the police shot an unarmed man. Of course, some prominent citizens have already heard about this and they're making inquiries. And it is now 7 a.m. And our chief, who is out of town, has been notified, but he cannot respond. So he's instructed me to handle the news conference that's going to be upcoming. Now, there's several things that we want to address. The first is going to be what steps am I going to take to remedy the community outcry? So immediately, I'm going to notify our public information officer and schedule a press conference a little bit later on in the day so that I can collect information and be prepared for that news conference. I'm also going to use social media to notify the community at large that investigative steps are being taken and to be patient while we do our job so that we can be thorough and provide accurate and factual information. I'm going to schedule a meeting prior to the news conference with some key stakeholders, and that will include some political leaders, also some community leaders, members of the clergy, and then maybe some academics so that we can get many perspectives and points of view on what's going on here. I'm going to allow them to voice their concerns individually and collectively, and I'm going to make sure that I keep the chief and the county prosecutor involved throughout this whole process so that they can, weigh in and give their opinions. I'm going to also notify the Attorney General's office on bias, crime, and community relations, since the allegation that's being made is that a police officer was the possible offender in a crime. I'm also going to bring in a community police presence in the neighborhood so that they know that we're out here and we're actively investigating and that we're concerned about what's going on in the community, and I'm going to make sure that those officers communicate that to the public at large. Because I want to prevent some further unrest. I want to prevent that before it happens. Finally, I'm going to instruct all officers from every shift about our procedures on civil disobedience. So I'll make sure that the current shift is being briefed and that future shifts are being informed before they hit the streets. Now, if there is large-scale unrest, I'll make sure that we call in mutual aid and officers that, we'll call officers in early and hold over officers that are already there to make sure that we can handle the crowd. Now, I also want to address what immediate steps I'm going to take regarding the actual investigation. I'm going to make sure that Internal Affairs is doing a thorough investigation, including a review of all the body-worn camera footage of the incident, and make sure that they can identify who that second officer is who allegedly went into the trunk and retrieved something. And I'm going to have them determine if any crimes were committed by either officer and take the appropriate steps. If there was a crime committed, I'm going to make sure that the county prosecutor's office is both notified and responding, and that they conduct a bifurcated investigation. The reason for that is I want them to be able to handle the criminal aspect of any charges, and then the internal affairs investigators can handle the departmental charges. This way, both investigations can go on at the same time, and we really don't have to worry about that 45-day rule coming into play. I'm going to make sure that all the evidence from the scene is collected and processed by investigating officers and detectives and also members of the county prosecutor's office and the attorney general's office. I am personally going to respond to the scene and initiate the ICS protocol. Now, what the ICS protocol does is it gives me access to more resources than I would normally have. It also provides for a unity of command for those resources. And finally, it allows for improved communications through common terminology. Essentially, it's all about interoperability, and we want to make sure that we utilize it to its fullest. I'm going to also establish a staging area near the scene, and I want the staging area to be a place that's large enough to receive all of the resources that are going to be coming our way, potentially, including investigators and mutual aid and all kinds of state level and federal level investigation teams. I want to make sure that there's a separate area in the staging area for the media, and I'm going to assign the public information officer to that staging area so he can interact with the media. And also I'm going to place a lieutenant there in charge to make sure he handles any logistics. Now, during this incident, I want you to know I'm going to use an authoritative style of leadership. Time is of the essence. I don't really have time to collaborate with a lot of people, so I'm going to use that. I'm also going to assign the most competent officer to the most important jobs, regardless of rank. I'm also going to establish a command post. Now, I'm going to make sure that the command post is upwind of the staging of the scene in the event that we get a huge amount of people coming and we need to use any kind of gas substances for crowd control, or if it turns into any kind of a riot situation. I want to make sure that they're upwind. I'm going to assign one officer to act as the scribe so he can document all of the information that's being taken down. I'm also going to assign two officers for communications. One will handle radio communications, the other will handle telephone communications, which will allow me to focus on the task at hand. I'm going to set an inner and an outer perimeter, and the inner perimeter will allow essential investigators and police officers to work the scene, while the outer perimeter provides a buffer between the public and the inner perimeter. I'm going to use traffic officers to man those outer perimeter positions, and I'm going to have them instruct people on where they can go, and also instruct the media on how to get to the staging area where they can interact with the public information officer. If we need more officers in the inner perimeter, more sworn officers, I'm going to make sure that we use auxiliary officers and any mutual aid officers to man those outer perimeter positions. I'm going to place Officer Thomas and the other as yet unidentified officer on modified duty until a determination can be made regarding if they committed some kind of infraction or a crime, and determine what charges and or if an immediate suspension is appropriate. Now, another step that I want to talk about is how I'm going to act regarding the media. First of all, I'm only going to release information in strict accordance with Executive Order 69. I'm going to comply with any OPRA requests in the designated time frame as per state law, so we don't want to run into any problems with late OPRA requests. I'm going to attempt to develop a partnership with the media. I want them to basically understand that I'm going to give them as much information as I possibly can according to the law and according to the situation at hand. But I need them to be fair with me, so I'm going to try and establish that trust. Most importantly, I'm not going to lie to them, and I'm not going to attempt to cover anything up. I'm going to be very truthful with them, but I'm going to make sure that I stay within the parameters of my job. I'm going to also try and establish a daily schedule for news conferences and updates, and I'm going to try to be mindful of their deadlines. If I respect their deadline requirements, that will help me build that trust with them, and hopefully we can utilize them to our fullest potential. And then, of course, I'm going to try and stay on schedule with those updates and news conferences so that they can come to rely on them. Now, there's other considerations regarding steps that I'll take now and also in the future. So, regarding the gentleman who was shot and killed, I will make sure that there is a proper death notification to his family, and that's according to the Homicide and Sudden Death Survivors Guideline, meaning that I'll utilize two officers, and at least one of those officers will be in uniform. If we can't spare the bodies, I'll make sure that clergy or some sort of a family friend, or at worst case, a member of the Victim Witness Advocacy Office will go with that officer, and we'll make sure that they stay with those family members until some other family members or some other friends or whatnot can accompany them. I'm going to make sure that we do a post incident debriefing so that we can identify what we did right, what we did wrong, what we could do better in the future. I'm going to also make sure that I identify any training needs. Then I'm going to assign the training division to develop a course that can be taught to other officers so that this doesn't happen in the future, or if we face a similar situation, that we in fact respond to it with the maximum efficiency. I'm going to make sure that the officers that are involved undergo a critical incident stress debriefing. That's going to be within 24 to 72 hours after the incident. Because right now, they're not being charged with anything, so we have to make sure that they're okay from the shock of this incident. I'm also going to make sure that we hold a community meeting after the incident so that we can address the situation with the community at large. I want to make sure that we get feedback from everyone and find out if there's any other lingering concerns, because I don't want this to turn into a big problem between the police and the community. So I'm going to make sure that I have this community meeting, invite key stakeholders and people who were affected by it, so that they can voice their opinions. If in fact they determine that the officers were guilty or they're being accused of a crime, I'm going to make sure that all the appropriate charges are levied against them, including murder and aggravated assault. And I'll make sure that official misconduct is part of the charges. I will work with the prosecutor's office and the attorney general's office to develop a complete investigation and make sure that they have everything they need to prosecute the officer or officers for any wrongdoing. I will make sure that I keep my supervisors informed during the entire process to make sure that they're not caught off guard by anything. And I'm going to make sure that any officers who are going to be hitting the streets are aware of everything that's going on so that they can be prepared to answer questions and to respond correctly to members of the community and also members of other jurisdictions who may be asking questions. I'll make sure that after the incident, I will return any officers who are currently working the scene back into service, and I'll make sure that I write thank you letters to any mutual aid department or any other resources that came to help us with this situation. I'll also make sure that I recognize any officers who really distinguished themselves during this incident, and I'll make sure that I do that in public so that the people understand that there are officers who did a good job and that we can identify that. And if there's any officers who fell short of our expectations, I'll make sure that I counsel them, but I'll do that in private. To recap everything, this was a difficult situation. It involves officers being accused of wrongdoing, so we have to make sure that the public does not lose faith in us. We have to, first of all, address the crime that was committed on the store itself, make sure that victim is taken care of and that proper reports are filed. And I'm definitely going to assign a lieutenant to review all reports that are being submitted in this and make sure that they're all correct before they get approved. We had to deal with the media. There was a big reaction for that. We had to make sure that we covered all the bases in terms of reaching out to the community and following up with everyone to make sure that they're comfortable with how the situation was resolved. And then, of course, if there's actual crimes committed, prosecuting the officers and making sure that is taken care of. I'm very happy with my team and how they responded, and I appreciate your help. Here's my business card in the event that you would like to contact me in the future about this.